what's up? Hello. I hope you all are doing as well as possible. As everyone is probably aware, the whole world is going through it at the moment. And so half of us aren't actually even in the same places that we intended to be, much less myself.
Hello, it's voiceover Les from the future. With all that said, I am not well, and given how not well I am, this will be my last video for a while. I'll be taking a pronounced mental health break from making videos until things improve, so until then I'll still be reading and looking forward to coming back with lots to share with everyone. So I'll enjoy this last video from me for a brief period.
So here we are today, very late, with my Q1 2020 wrap up, but let's get going because while things are terrible, I did manage to read a significant number of books in the first quarter of the year. So I began the year with a hunt for a good romance novel for my library book club, and suffice it to say I didn't really find what I wanted, but I picked a different book instead, which we'll get to later. Even though I didn't want to choose it, I chose it anyway. But I started with listening to the audiobook of Tessa Dare's Say Yes to the Marquess, which I think should say Marquess, but you know what? I didn't make the word, nor did I make the pronunciation. This is a Tessa Dare book, and I listened to quite a few of them while I was trying, like the first little chunk of quite a few Tessa Dare novels, while I was trying to pick one out. And I chose Tessa Dare because I did a little sleuthing and discovered that she was very highly recommended as a romance novelist. And so I chose this one just because it sounded more interesting than some of the others. It's part of a different series about castles. I think it's called Castles Ever After. And it is exactly what I anticipated. The one really great highlight out of it was that the main character actually has very non-traditional ambitions for a lady of that time period. So that was very interesting. It was all right. It was definitely read just a little bit slower, that anticipatory tone of voice, which drove me crazy, but somehow I made it through all, I think, like 10 hours of that book. So it was something. I don't remember quite what I gave it, if I rated it at all on Goodreads. I would give it 3 stars. It was enjoyable. I recommend it to people who are looking for a classic romance novel. I continued this journey looking for the right romance book with The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. This was very cute. She did a very nice job. I just really enjoyed it. It was, like I said, it was cute. That's what it was. It was just cute. It was a cute book. And I tore through it probably in about a day and a half. It wasn't particularly long. Because the main character in this book is autistic, the writing style feels a little bit more methodical and to the point, which I really appreciated. I feel like in romance novels where that is not the case, the writing is sometimes all over and flowery and pondery, and this had a tiny bit of that going on, but not as much as you might expect. So I definitely appreciated the straightforwardness of this book. And it was just cute. It was very accepting and cute, and I very much enjoyed it. And if you are looking for a cute book and for some reason haven't read this already, this is a cute book. I moved then to Ayesha at Last by Uzma Jalaluddin. And so this is a Pride and Prejudice retelling, but all of the characters are Muslim. So it's fascinating, especially for someone, or as someone, I guess, who does not belong to that faith, to sort of get a better sense of how courtship and marriage works. And it's nice to see that sprinkled in with the classic Pride and Prejudice characterizations that we've all come to know and love. There was a different Pride and Prejudice retelling that I also wanted to read, but ultimately I picked this one because it was just a little more different from what I was used to. Definitely enjoyable. It was predictable, but that was only because I know the plot of Pride and Prejudice and could sort of see how things were going to play out, and it was fun to do the matching of, you know, what was in the original text and what had to become in this text. It was good. It was definitely enjoyable. If you like a Pride and Prejudice retelling, I would recommend this one. Interspersed with all of these romance novels, I then read the next installment in the Kopp sisters series, which is by Amy Stewart, called Cop Sisters on the March. We're starting to veer away in this, I think, 5th or 6th book now, from just Constance's plotline, which I really don't love. And we introduce a new character in this, and it was interesting to hear her story. She's obviously, it's historical fiction, so it's all based on real events, and she's fabricated some and done a lot of research on the others. I don't know. I don't know if there is another one, if I will read it, because I enjoy these characters, but we're starting to really get away from what I did like about it. The plot is so different now, and obviously their lives change and times change and they have to adapt. But I don't know, I had some trouble with the middle of the series already, where it sort of shifted perspectives and shifted narration, and I'm having trouble actually now remembering whether this book did that too. But in this book, all of the sisters go to what is essentially an army camp for women and get ready for the impending war by doing sort of ridiculous training exercises until suddenly it becomes a little more real after an accident happens, which is fascinating because it's kind of a perfect place for Constance and a perfect place for Norma, but other things go on and not everybody is happy there. So this was good. It was definitely not my favorite out of all of the Cop Sisters books. So I then picked up the next Helen Hoang book, which is The Bride Test. I appreciated how the characters from the first novel also made an appearance, and then auxiliary characters from the first book. It's not a series, but the characters showed up a little bit later, and so this book had characters whose names I was already familiar with, who were the main characters. I didn't like this one quite as much, and I don't know why. I don't want to say the plot was exactly the same, because the plot was not exactly the same, but maybe I had already run out my cuteness quota for the month of January at the time that I went on to this one too, because I was trying to compare a bunch of romance novels. Although I did appreciate that this book had a focus on immigration and being in the United States as someone who basically is there at the grace of others and has nothing and doesn't know where they should be going or what they should be doing or what their purpose is. Like the main character sort of has a purpose and she's not super comfortable with it, but she knows it will provide her a better life for folks back home. So it's got a lot of those struggles and back and forths in it, which is important to bring to the forefront, and not always something I think we get in the romance genre. She said, having not read very much of it, but you can tell that theme is not necessarily always clear, and it is in this book, which was also cute, just not as cute as the first one. So I then moved from this contemporary romance series to the Jasmine Guillory? I have difficulty saying her name. I moved on to that collection of books, which from what I can tell sort of do the same thing, where it's like a big batch of characters and one book is focused on some of them and they all sort of show up across. But I read The Wedding Date, which I have to say I did not enjoy. I felt like first of all, my main problem was with a piece of the dialogue where they all just repeated each other's names very often, and at least in my life, I don't call people by their names that frequently when I speak to them, and so that was really throwing me off. But it was cute, it was nice. There was one line in it that I think she was trying to think about whether or not she should have another donut, and she shrugs and goes back to her emails and takes another donut anyway. Oh, it's instead of going out and getting green juice or something, which as someone who loves green juice and also loves donuts, just doing the shrug and going back to your emails, that I totally understand. But I loved the fact that the main character was in a political office and really high up and was doing a lot and really had a super focused job. It was a nice comparison in my head as opposed to this, the woman who's laying around the castle or having a quiet, angry life being brought up in this sort of high society. No, this lady has seen a lot and is doing the most, and with some good characterizations. They just said each other's names all the time, and it drove me crazy. Also, I was very frustrated with everyone for their lack of decision making, their inability to be should I or should I not, which is probably the whole point of the plot, but I found it very irritating. Just make a choice. And it was after that I said, no more of this, I know what we're reading. And we read Sarah Gruen's At the Water's Edge, which, to be fair, is not necessarily a romance novel. It's a historical fiction novel with some romance in it, which is why I chose it, because the romance wasn't the whole point of the plot, which I thought that my book club folks would be a little more amenable to, since they were reticent about reading a romance novel to begin with. So we read this. I have already read and reviewed this book here. This is not my favorite Sarah Gruen book, so I won't talk about it too much, despite the fact that it is set in Scotland, and I did live in Scotland. I was hoping that I would like it more the second time around, and that is just not, that's not how it panned out. We spent the hour in that book club meeting sort of taking this book completely to task, so I won't rehash it for you here, but Sarah Gruen, At the Water's Edge. If you have extreme thoughts on this book, please let me know in the comments. Next, in February, I listened to the audiobook primarily. I got the text and the audiobook in hoping to sort of go back and forth and see which one was going to engage me more, and I'm really glad that I went with the audio for this. But it's Elizabeth Acevedo's With the Fire on High, which I have been meaning to read for a very long time because I think the cover is just beautiful. I love this illustration. This was lovely. This is a YA book. You're probably all familiar with it because I am behind the times. This came out a while ago. Again, another really cute book. It was so great to just hear from someone that was struggling so much and to see them do well and to see a success and just an illumination and a peek into a world, as books are perfect for doing, with which I am very unfamiliar. So really lovely story. The focus on food. I had to snack the entire time I was listening to this book. I basically listened to it over just 2 days, a whole weekend, and did a puzzle and ate snacks the whole time. So that's, you know, a great way to listen to an audiobook if you are looking for an option for that. And then lastly, I read Searcy by Madeline Miller as part of the Femme Fatale readathon. I did not finish it in that readathon. I actually did a disastrous job at doing anything for that readathon, which is why I did not film a wrap-up for it, but also it was taking place right before the global health crisis really took hold, but because of the nature of my job, it was taking hold in the work that I do and the preparations that we needed to make even further ahead of that. So it threw all of my reading totally off, and it has now thrown my whole life totally off. So here we are with that, but I did read Searcy. Folks had told me before in the comments, I believe, of my video that my TBR video for that readathon, that it was sad. It was definitely a sad book. Man, I mean, I liked it, but it was just sort of depressing to hear things from her vantage point. Definitely had a real feminist tone to it. There's a lot going on. Really solidified my interest in Greek mythology, I think, but I'm really particular about the Greek mythology that I read, so it was good and I enjoyed it. I can definitely see how some people hate it, but it was very, very sad, and I knew that going in, thank goodness, because I was able to, you know, pick it up and put it down and be like, oh, this is not for today. So it took me a while to read it, but I did get through it. It was good. I think I gave it 4 stars. And then just as a bonus book, I also began to read Make Your Home Among Strangers, which was our book club pick for March, which we have not obviously been able to meet to discuss. And I haven't finished the book yet, but I only have about 50 pages left, so I will mention it here as a book that I am still working on. It is very good. It's gotten a little bit of press. If you wanted to do a Google, folks are apparently offended by it or having to read it. It's about a first-generation college student. She's a Cuban young woman, and she attends a highly prestigious liberal arts college up in the Northeast, and what happens with her experience there, and apparently there are people for whom that upsets them. It's very interestingly written. If I'm right in remembering, the author doesn't use quotation marks, which is something I find equally frustrating and a really bold choice, so I appreciate it. If you've read that book, please let me know. I would love to talk to folks further about that, especially since I can't hold my book club, which, as we all know, is very important to me. That was the first quarter. It is now May. I have read no additional books, and that's upsetting to me, but everything is upside down right now, so I'm trying to give myself a little bit of a break from feeling bad about that, but we'll see. Perhaps I will find my way back into reading soon. I hope you all are doing as well as possible, given the state of things. anything you might want to know about Rebecca and I is indeed in the comments down below. I hope you're having lovely weeks and lovely lives, and we will see you very soon.